This guy is fighting. Got me in those darn thick weeds, just like last week. Gotta get him out of that. Just gonna bring him right to me with the weeds and all. That's all I can do. I see him here. I got him. Come here, buddy. Oh yeah. Not bad. That's what the drop shot can do. Drop shotting the weeds can be well worthwhile. Beautiful fish. Good 3.5. Hey bass fanatics, I'm Den Haring and welcome back to my channel, Fish Den 365. Hey, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you were on fish? You knew that where you were throwing your baits there was some fish, but you just couldn't catch them? Well, when you're in that situation, I think the best method you could use is a drop shot. A drop shot is not the greatest tool for when you're searching for fish, but once you have fish located, and if they're tough to catch, I can't think of anything better to try than a drop shot. There's just so many different baits that you can try, so many different fine-tuned presentations to throw with a drop shot. It works in so many different environments. It's got to be one of the most versatile types of baits that you can throw. So this particular video is all about the drop shot, how to make the most of it, how to make it work for you. And everybody's different when it comes to the drop shot. You're going to gain confidence in different things and different techniques. So I suggest when you do throw a drop shot to experiment quite a bit. Find something that works for you that you can develop confidence in, and you'll find that that's what's going to work best for you. So when I talk about standard drop shot, oh geez. Caught one. I got one here, folks. Boy, a drop shot is so effective that I could even catch fishing lures in my own boathouse on it. Now that is an effective use of the drop shot. Look at that. I caught a golden shiner crankbait. Let me get this thing off here. We'll continue with the video. I really had it hooked good too. Okay, so I have a drop shot rod here. When I'm throwing the standard drop shot, a spinning rod is the right thing to use for a standard drop shot presentation. Now you can use a bait caster when you're power shotting with a heavier weight and you're Texas rigging the bait with maybe a 3/0 extra wide gap hook and you're throwing it into heavy cover like weeds or brush piles and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, the tool for the drop shot is a spinning rod. This is a Mojo spinning rod. It's made by St. Croix. It's called a Mojo Bass spinning rod. This one's specific for drop shotting. So it's a 6-foot 10-inch rod. It's medium light power, extra fast action, and here down near the butt section of the rod it says drop shot / finesse. So it's really meant specifically for drop shotting, and I really like this rod for that purpose. Now I've mentioned before that I like to try and use the lightest drop shot weight I can get away with most of the time. So if it's not very windy, I'll throw a lighter weight. That usually means a slower fall to the bait, and the reason why I like that on a drop shot is I want the fish to have every opportunity to see that bait falling in front of it, because many times when you first pitch that drop shot out or cast it out there, on its initial fall, oftentimes fish will rush over and grab the bait before the drop shot weight ever gets to the bottom, and you're just giving them a little more time to do that with that slower fall. So and then once you get it onto the bottom, it becomes a finesse approach, a finesse technique. So I actually have two identical rods, two Mojo rods. One of them is paired with a Pflueger President spinning reel, and the other one is paired, the exact same rod, is paired with a Shimano Symmetry reel. The Symmetry reel is a little more expensive than the Pflueger, but I actually like the Pflueger reel better. It's a little heavier than the Shimano reel, but I think it holds up to abuse a little more. So I don't mind the little extra weight. I think it's a more robust reel. Both reels are excellent for this. You know, the price range we're talking about, you can get that Pflueger President for $50. These rods are probably in the $110 to $120 range, if I remember correctly. The symmetry reel is more in the near the $100 range. But that Pfluger President is a very good reel. Both of them are fine. But two identical rods here. Oftentimes when I'm drop shot fishing, I have them both rigged up with different baits. That way I don't need to be changing baits. I can just pick up one rod, experiment with that a little bit, and then pick up the other and see how that goes. One of the nice things about the drop shot is you get a lot of bites. It's a presentation that attracts a lot of fish, and it attracts a lot of bites. It's a great thing to teach kids. It's pretty easy to learn to fish, and you know, it actually develops your sensitivity for knowing when you get a bite. One of the things that I've noticed in my home lake, which is Nockamixon, is years ago, it's a great jig lake, it always was. Years ago when we fished a jig on Nockamixon, more often than not when a fish would bite it and you had your bait out there and you were just slowly retrieving it in, shaking it and working it along the bottom, when a bass would hit it, the feeling and what you would actually hear internally would be something like thunk. That's actually what you would feel and hear internally when that bite took place. It was a very solid thunk, and that was usually the bass sucking that bait in. If you felt or heard two of those, usually that meant that the bass sucked it in and just blew it back out again. But when you'd feel that thunk, it was a very good feeling because you knew exactly what happened. That bass just came up and you just suck that bait in. It's like a vacuum. You know, they can suck water through their mouths and out their gills, and everything that they're sucking in comes right into their mouth. And when that happens and they do that quickly, you can feel that right through your rod, right through your line, right into your fingertips, and it's just a really good feeling. Today the bass are so, I mean, there's been so much pressure at Knox, very few of the jig bites are that way anymore, very few. Usually it's just what we call a pressure bite, or the fish you just feel weight on the end of the line, so they're coming up and they're much more tentatively grabbing that bait, and when you lift up and you feel weight, that is not natural. In other words, it's more than what the jig itself would weigh. You just set the hook. But what I noticed with these drop shot presentations, like drop shotting a beaver on the same lake or the biffle bug, is when the fish grab it, oftentimes it's still that thunk. They're not so used to these drop shot baits being right in front of their face, and so you can have that out there and you can be working it very slowly or just holding it dead still, and they'll come up to it and all of a sudden you'll feel that thunk and you know you got the bite, and it's just a matter of pulling back, setting the hook and reeling the fish in. So it's a fun way to fish. It's a fun thing to learn. If you like to get a lot of bites, this is one of the best ways to do it. So in this video, I was actually using a number of different baits. One of them was this biffle bug, a 5.5 inch biffle bug here, and I have it nose hooked but vertical like this. In other words, not flat but vertical, and the reason for that is because I wanted to have that bait fish profile, and I just like fishing it. I prefer fishing it that way. If you were to fish it flat, I'm sure that'll catch just as many fish, maybe more. It would probably look a bit like a leech that way. So having one that's very dark in color, black, may be a very good approach. Now when I was fishing a clear body of water for smallmouths, I was throwing a smaller drop shot. This is a 3-inch easy shiner, and it's made by Kitech. And you can see I would take chartreuse dye and I'd dip that tail in chartreuse. The reason for that is I was fishing for smallmouths. Smallmouths sometimes go crazy for that chartreuse. It's just a little bit of extra attractant that I like to fish, that I like to use when I'm fishing. And this is nice because this tail has a kick to it, so as the bait is falling, it's actually swimming. And you can actually fish this in a way where you're dragging the bait along, you're dragging the drop shot weight along the bottom. And this easy shiner will be in front of it and it'll be swimming. So you could actually keep it down near the bottom, fish it very slow near the bottom because this weight keeps it down there for you, and it allows you to maintain bottom contact with the weight and having the lure, the easy shiner, very close to the bottom. Very effective way to fish, and you can at least cover a little water that way. So you can cover water with a drop shot, it's just not the most effective way to do it. It's better to know that to throw in an area where you know you've got fish. A couple other baits that we used recently that we show on the video. This is a Reaction Innovations Sweet Beaver. Again, I like to rig this vertically this way, in other words this way, not flat, because I'm trying to give it a bait fish profile. And this has a great, fantastic bluegill profile this way. I really like fishing this bait, especially in weed beds. I usually will not fish this so much in open water. I find that it works better around weeds and around cover. So usually if there's a milfoil bed or that kind of situation, or even lily pads, I'll pitch this in there with the drop shot weight and just let that drop shot weight go to the bottom and just, you know, shake my rod a little bit and just give this thing a little action. Maybe let some slack line in and it goes down and then bring it back up again. The idea when you're fishing drop shot is, when you're fishing that way, is not to move the weight, to keep the weight in one place, and you're just moving the bait and making the bait look like it's alive. So that's a little bit of a different approach than, say, dragging that easy shiner along the bottom where you are swimming across. But that's just how versatile the drop shot is. You can do both things with it, and you can fish a lot of different ways. And I would think that if you use your imagination, you can come up with creative ways yourself that I haven't thought about. And so that's what makes the drop shot so special. Another great bait to use with the drop shot is Berkeley Gulp. This is a Berkeley Gulp 3-inch minnow. This is a smelt color. It's just so natural. It's got the smell to it. It's got that forked tail, and again, I just nose hook it. I just hook it where I put the point of the hook in where the gill is here, and then I just have the point of the hook come straight out the nose. That way, when you're reeling the bait in, it tangles. It spins much less, and it has much less tendency to tangle your line. Also, I think it just works the bait better too. So these were the 4 baits that I fished with in the video, but boy, there's just so many other options you can do. You can throw a worm on there, you can throw a creature bait, a large creature bait. I would encourage you to just experiment and find out what you're confident in. And I would say that when you do catch a fish, or a bunch of fish, that's going to up your confidence, and that's going to allow you to use something that works for you. And in many cases, the fish have not seen these types of presentations with a drop shot. They're used to seeing a robo worm or just the standard drop shot baits, and you know, I'm finding that creature baits work on there. All different kinds of presentations can work, and so that's what makes it more versatile, and it can give the fish a little bit of a different look even in pressured waters and allow you to catch that much more fish. I don't know that many people that drop shot a beaver, for example, and yet I'm finding that in the pressured waters that I fish, it's been quite effective. Another great presentation is to use a wacky rig with a drop shot. So for example, you can wacky rig a Senko, and you can use multiple different sizes, 5-inch, 6-inch, 4-inch, 3-inch, any size you want. You just wacky rig it with a small hook and drop shot rig, and now you've got the wacky rig. And you know, if you have this much distance between your weight and your bait, you can let that fall and it'll have that seductive wiggle as it goes down, and you can just lift it back up until you feel the weight again, and now it just dances right back up in their face, in the fish's face again. So wacky rigging on a drop shot can be very effective. Another approach that I've experimented with these trick worms especially is what we call a gilly rig or a gill rig. So instead of fishing it wacky where you put the hook like this in the middle of the worm, or instead of putting it at the very nose, you take it and you actually put the hook in about 1/2 inch to 1 inch down from the nose, depending on the length of the bait, where the gill of a fish would be, for example. And that gives it a whole different look, a whole different action. It falls really interestingly. It catches fish. It catches a lot of fish. A lot of the pros are doing this now because, again, it's just a little bit of a different look that not a lot of people are doing. So gilly hooking the bait could also be very effective. So let's say you're in the situation where you know there's some fish and you just want to catch them. You might not care about the size of the fish. Maybe you just want to have a numbers day. Maybe you're in a area where there's a whole bunch of bluegills and you want to catch some of those bluegills. The only thing you got to do there is just downsize your hook. Just use a smaller drop shot hook. I like a Gamakatsu hook for drop shotting. I'll leave all of the baits and the rods and reels and the hooks. I'll put a link to those items in the description so that you can find them there. But for the smaller baits, just use a smaller drop shot hook or smaller finesse hook. This is a 3-inch gulp. Quite a small bait, but you can go down smaller still. They've got 2.5 inches. You can go down to real tiny crappie baits or very, very small types of baits this way. Drop shotting that, it's extremely effective for bluegills and perch and crappies and everything else you can think of. So it's just a very easy way to catch fish without having to use live bait. You can just use a lot of these different available baits. There's a little bait called a trout magnet that you can use with a small hook on a drop shot. Works extremely well. It looks like a nymph, catches fish. So you know, and as you think about catching larger size fish, well, then you upsize that hook a little bit, upsize the baits for example. Generally, the hook sizes that I use for drop shotting bass are anywhere from a number 2 to a number 1 to a 1/0. That's usually the sizes of the hooks that I'm using for bass fishing. But if you were going after smaller fish that have smaller mouths, you just downsize that hook a little more and you'll hook up that many more fish. Well, if you haven't fished the drop shot, I sure hope I was able to convince you to at least try it. And if you have fished it and I've given you a few new ideas for baits, give them a try. Comment in the comments. Let me know what you think, how it's working for you. If you like this video, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, very important. Subscribe and hit that bell and you'll get notifications for when the next video is released. As always, feel free to share the video with your friends. Remember, we're certified Bassified, and may God bless your fishing endeavors.